So, Hugo, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing good. Mostly on the evening for my side,
On your
but I
side,
am doing great.
yes, you're
And
in. You're on the other side of the world, right?
yes, I am in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, in what it was, let's call it a typical Dutch weather today, which brings together storm and sun and rain all in the same day.
Oh wow. Okay. Yes, and here in
Yeah.
California, we are in the middle of summer, so it's really hot, and California is super dry. There's no rain here. But I want to welcome you to the Jehu Garcia podcast. I wanted to have you on to talk about electric charging with electric
Yeah, thank
vehicles.
you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your company, EVBox, and what you guys are all about?
Yeah, sure. So EVBox is one of the leading global electric vehicle charging companies. So we manufacture, develop charging solutions for businesses around the world. And this means like potentially charging stations for people that want to charge at home, workplaces, fleet companies that they want to electrify their fleets, the traditional fast chargers that are on the highway potentially. So we develop and manufacture the hardware, but also develop the software to manage the whole charging infrastructure. And we also have a large network of partners that help us serve around the world. So today, TVBox has about 10 years of existing. And we started in 2010. And I joined the organization in 2015 when we were about 15 people. We had just come out from a funding round, and the intention was to expand beyond the Netherlands. And since the last 5 years, we expanded to over 70 countries in terms of where we place our charging stations, and grew from 15 to 600 EV boxers around the world, which is quite exciting.
Wow, that is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So you manufacture the hardware and the
Yeah,
software side of it. You say, okay, and these are level two or DC fast charging?
both. So we
Both.
developed also the level 2 for the US, and for, of course, the regular charging for European and other markets, as well as the fast chargers up to 350 kilowatts, which means that
Whoa.
people could add, I don't know, over 100 miles in 10 minutes or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty exciting, right? That the I think that's where the charging forms or the standards are getting to, right? But I don't think cars exist that can charge that fast yet, right? So you guys are ahead of the curve.
exactly. Yeah, so we are a bit ahead of the curve, but one of the important things is to be future proof, and we are
Yeah.
developing such solutions. And with a fast growing market as the one that we are witnessing with electric mobility, we know that the cars are going to catch up. And we do know that at a certain point in time, those ultra fast chargers are going to become of higher importance, especially for people that want to have long drives across state or across country.
Yes, that is a thing. I mean, I don't know how many people are still not on board with electric cars, but here in America, I think it's such a weird thing to be able to get on the car and then drive and yeah, pull up to, my wife owns a
Mm,
Tesla. We have one and she drives it, and we pull up to this fat superchargers, and like yeah, in 10 minutes you're like, okay, we're good to go for another 100 miles,
mm,
and I think once you get to that point, yeah, your cars become just as good, better than than
mhm.
traditional gasoline or petrol cars, right? And so I think yeah, I think you guys have more chargers. I get the sense that you guys have more chargers in Europe than we do here. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is true. Majority of our charging network, we have today, to date, we have installed over 175,000 charging points.
Whoa.
Majority of those are in Europe, which is natural because we expanded in Europe. We entered the US market in 2016 with a singular product, get to know the market. Of course, certification in the US is rather complex and it takes time to approve.
Wow.
And this year we are finally bringing to market a whole range of L2, but also fast chargings to the US market. So that will help us also expand and hopefully bring the same level of quality of solutions in Europe to the US market. But yeah, European is our main market, and hopefully the US will catch up pretty quickly in the next coming years.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I mean, like I said, the superchargers from the Tesla side are amazing, and yeah, we need to
Mm-hmm.
see that on the other side, right? With all the others, I'm actually getting ready to take delivery of a Rivian, right? And that has the
Oh, nice.
CCS
Yeah.
combo, and so I'm like, where am I going to charge? You know, because because I know where the Tesla chargers are. I don't know where the CCS combos are at, right? So we're gonna have to explore that and see. And this one's gonna have a bigger battery, right? You're looking
Mm.
at. I don't know yet which one I'm gonna get, but I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna go for the big 180 kilowatt hour battery. So that's a monster to try to charge, right? You
Yeah.
definitely need a 100 kilowatt charging or faster to be able
Yeah.
to not have to
Yeah.
sit there, for an hour.
Well, yeah, one of the great things is that naturally the US beyond the Tesla network, which is something phenomenal and is very much was a great strategy from Tesla to when the market was still in its infancy. I think it was quite visionary from Musk to look at the whole value chain of how electric mobility is going to work out and not just as producing a car. And I think that the supercharging network is definitely an asset for Tesla owners. On the other hand, Electrify America is quite an intensive program that is in the US, and they have the ambition of having an equivalent charging network to provide the same experience for non-Tesla drivers, which I think is going to, and Tesla owners, of course, because they can charge everywhere beyond the network as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be it's going to be an exciting trigger, of course, for American drivers.
Yeah, that's true. I think Tesla's success, it's largely due to the fact that they took on the charging infrastructure, right? Because no one else is gonna do it for them, and so in the early days, right, 7 years ago when they started.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but now, I think, do you think the because now the so CCS combo, right? That's mainly what you guys are doing, the fast charging level 3 DC to DC. That's the standard that's gonna
Yeah,
win.
yeah. So yeah, that I think. So what we see is that, of course, there was a chat demo one that was mostly driven by Japan. That was because of like Mitsubishi, Nissan, but even those car manufacturers, at least in Europe, said we're going to adopt combo CCS2 combo on the next generation of electric vehicles of their own, which means that at least in Europe, CCS2 is definitely going to win the battle, if you can consider a battle.
Yeah.
We produce traditionally actually both CCS and CHAdeMO with our fast chargers because there was that need of like, let's satisfy both.
Hmm.
Looking at the future, there's high chances that CCS2 will become the norm, which also allows for, hopefully to have fast charger that allow two cars to charge at the same time.
Yeah.
And with Tesla also making a Tesla Model 3 CCS2, if they adopt that standard as well, who says that the Tesla network one day will not open up at a premium price for non-Tesla cars, and that for Tesla can be quite a hidden revenue stream
Yeah.
that will definitely increase the value of the company. They might not need at this stage, but who knows what they'll decide in the future.
Yeah, I think right now they have trouble keeping up just with their own demand. So I think at this point it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once that levels off,
Mm-hmm.
then it might be a thing. And he's said that he's open to it, right? So didn't I hear that
Yeah.
there are Nissan vehicles now that they have CCS combo plugs now, sockets instead of CHAdeMO?
Yeah, there is a next generation of Nissan Leafs that is already intended to come with CCS2, at least for the European market.
Oh, for the European
So
market. Oh,
that,
I see. And
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Teslas don't
Yeah.
use CCS combo, right? They use another little plug. The
They have a customized plug for Tesla owners,
Okay, yeah.
but there is a few converters, and in Europe, the Tesla Model 3 already comes with a CCS2 combo, not with Tesla
Really?
proprietary cable management.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So
Okay.
that
Does that mean that they
So it's already
have?
like another move.
And it's only one plug. It's not like the other cars that have two plugs at the same time,
Yeah.
multiple plugs.
Well, they have like Tesla, of course, has the yeah. So Tesla has also the traditional Type 2 connector, which in the US is
J
it has the other name J.
J
No,
seventeen
I'm
seventy two.
having
Yeah, J
yeah
seventeen seventy two.
yeah exactly. And yeah, so in Europe it's just known as Type 2 cable, and that's for regular charging AC. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's quite a bit of that happening because I just heard that Tesla has manufactured um, the destination chargers. Those are the little EVSEs that they have for
Mm-hmm.
for home, and they make them now
Yeah.
with a J1772 plug.
Yeah.
So it's an essential. Like they
Yeah.
make a plug that doesn't work with their Teslas, unless they use the little connector, the little adapter to use, right? So that means they're making them so
Yeah.
they're backwards compatible with other cars, right? Which I thought that was
Yeah.
great.
And yeah. And of course, like in the future, let's see which is the direction that Tesla is looking for. Yeah, for them, is really mostly about their own network of customers. Yeah, it's all about the customer experience that they offer,
Yeah,
and that's the business model around. And hopefully, well, the intention is of course to connect also their battery storage with the power wall, with the solar panels that they plan to launch. They really want to bring this whole integrated energy ecosystem. So it's almost like people see it as an automaker, or Tesla is a car manufacturer, but it's way more than that. It's actually a hybrid of being a car manufacturer, almost an energy enabling company. In the future, who knows with the gigafactories, it will not be also producers of batteries. So
yeah.
it's incredible the expansion of business models that are available to a network or to a business like Tesla, and why almost justifies why their valuation is going into into crazy hikes, and also slowdowns, of course.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. So that is pretty cool. So that means your chargers now can start charging Teslas because you said they're making them in Europe, at least in Europe for with CCS Combo. So you guys are starting to
Yeah,
service and provide service to Tesla drivers in.
well, the Tesla drivers can charge in Europe, and even in the US, they can charge at any station that any public station. So that's the good thing of a Tesla. Even if they have
Is there an
like their
adapter
own
for?
fast charging connection,
Is there an adapter
there's no
for
need for an
CCS?
adapter. For CCS, so there's an adapter from the Tesla plug
Uh-huh.
with CCS. Yeah. So if Tesla drivers have for the fast charging network, if they have the traditional Tesla charger, they also have an ability to their specific adapters to connect to a CCS to station,
Oh,
fast charging
really?
station. Yeah.
Oh,
If you're talking about regular stations, that doesn't really make a difference. In the US, the standard for regular stations is the J1772. So that's across any station, Tesla, non-Tesla.
yeah.
And in Europe is Type 2, Tesla, non-Tesla. So it doesn't matter if it's a Tesla car, a Volkswagen, a Nissan, they all connect to the same end part of a charging station, a regular one. Of course, the fast charging is the one that complexify a bit because of the different, let's call it, power dynamics over the last year. Chademo, CCS, Tesla, they were all kind of battling for that end, but probably in the future it's going to become CCS2 as the main dominant one.
CCS, yes. And then hopefully there'll be enough or the same or more of those than there are of the Tesla ones so that even us non-Tesla drivers will be able to charge everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
about that because we were talking about that my last podcast that we published with someone here in the U.S. that installs charging stations right now and at home and also a little
Mm-hmm.
bit on commercial sites and stuff. But I was asking them, are the DC chargers, are these just a bunch of small chargers that are paralleled up to be able to produce, whatever 50 or 100 kilowatt or whatever it is that they can do, or is it like,
Yeah. So
pro-
so yeah. Go ahead.
or is it proprietary like um, charging modules that don't scale down smaller? Are they modular in some design?
So yeah, so the interesting thing is that there are two philosophies, and which one of them is like the less modular one, which is more like standalone, off the shelf, and the electronics are built to deliver that exact power. Yeah, so it's a 50 kilowatt power output station or a 100 kilowatt, they might be built just to deliver that power. So if a car goes and charges there, and it has the ability to capture all the power. It will start flowing at 100 and then reduce to 90, 80, 70, 60 because the highest amount of power is at the beginning, especially the first 20 minutes, but then it reduces the charging over time. Now, what is interesting is that the trend in terms of fast charging is, of course, towards modularity, where there is a stack up of, let's call it, power converters, which might be developed by the manufacturer of charging or outsourced from other vendors. And then you have more flexibility, of course, because then you can start with 30 kilowatts, DC power output, but then you can, upgrade to 60, maybe 90, 120, 150. So it allows for a more scalable solution for customers that might see the needs increasing or decreasing over time. And I think that to be that in combination with elements of connecting to potentially large battery storage, to avoid charging the grid, that can be extremely interesting, especially because of assuming the highways in the US, for example, and if you have a network of 30 fast chargers, and if 30 cars go there, naturally the grid might have some challenges to bring all that power. But if there is a combination with battery storage, where there is a power unit that has a certain amount of energy stored that can power some cars and then take a bit from the grid, that balance is going to be extremely important as adoption increases. So, and that's especially in the US that has, I would say, a less complex and to a certain extent even less sophisticated grids compared to Europe, where there is already three-phase. One phase in the US is mostly a one-phase or two-phase grid capacity. That might bring different challenges, of course.
Yeah, so your grids in Europe can deliver more power, right? Because there's three phase. It's a standard, and only here there's three phase, but I think it's only like in commercial. Like here
Yeah,
in my building, on this building that I'm at, we have three phase. So I'm like, oh, I could put
great.
a fast charger here. Now, but the other thing with that is the price, right? They're quite expensive. These charging machines. What is the
Yeah. So,
average?
so a fast, well, it will depend a lot. A fast charging site can go anything from, I don't know, 50, 100K up to millions, depending on how many they are setting up. It
Yeah.
depends on the construction site. If there is energy available, if there is no energy available, if you have to have the grid company making all the connections to deliver the energy, then you are really talking about a couple millions to make what could be I'll say a standard fast charging network.
Yeah.
So for these operators, it's really important, naturally, the reliability of the charging stations, because they cannot afford not to have them working,
Yeah.
or they have to have a very high uptime, because they cannot have the situation where the driver goes there, the station is not working or something is wrong, and one, you get an upset customer, and secondly, you are losing your revenue, because utilization is the second most important thing. You need to have a very high utilization to make a return on investment over the next couple of years. And
Yeah.
that's extremely important, the combination of both two. That's why also for these site operators of fast charging networks, picking up the right location is extremely important, to analyze the traffic, where people move, what is the traditional. So that understanding of that data, which is quite available in Europe and the US, is quite important to see where traffic happens, what are the most used sites, and those become most profitable, of course.
Are they profitable? What is the return on investment on the average? I think because I said it's expensive equipment, right?
Mm.
And then you got to pay permits, and then you got to pay for power, right? I mean, like you're buying the power from the utilities, and then you're selling it to the customer. You're marking it up, and then you're selling it to the customer. I think that's the scheme that.
Yeah, so a customer will essentially, yes, pay potentially for of course the energy usage. Yeah, that's traditionally on site, but they could, depending on the models that exist, they could pay for different yeah, for different tariffs, for example. What's already happening in Europe is that if you are part of the network, let's call it there is an Ionity network, and if you are part of that network, then you pay a certain fee. But if you are not, you are paying a premium. So there is already like a bit
Ah,
similar to the full card actually in that sense. If you have a Shell full card or a BP full card, if you go with a BP to a Shell station, you're naturally going to pay an up price compared to and vice versa. Yeah. So what we saw in terms of the return on investment for these customer groups is that for them it really depends. Yeah. So there are already some cases where in Europe already some sites are becoming actually profitable with potentially 49% margin or even higher.
wow.
And that of course harmonizes across time and depends really on the fast charging network. But of course, in terms of costs, we are considering like the cost of the installation, and of course there is a certain margin, and that can really drive up the revenues. Yeah, so that it really depends on the utilization. So there are some cases in Europe already of companies like Fastnet, Allego, even NG Mobility, which have some sites where they already expect utilization. So what is important at utilization is like, I believe, cannot be below 10%, has to be higher than 10%. And if it is like something like 75% during daytime, it really can bring quite some profitability. The hard part is always a grid connection. So high power connections are expensive. So it can be, I don't know, in Europe at least, if I translate to the US, it would be something like $500 to $1,000 a year per connection, which
Okay.
then, of course, that becomes a bit more challenging.
Yeah. Wow. So they have to be in use more than 10% to be profitable. That means out of the although the day, the 24 hours or 12 hours, whatever you want to, then 10% of that has to be in use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that would be, I think that will be about the utilization. Of course, like ideally 20-35% of utilization, I think. So, but that depends on case by case. I think some calculated 13.5% over a period of 9-year lifetime or 10-year lifetime. Some other people calculated, that for the investment to work out, it has to be at over 8% over 12 years. So different charging networks are looking at a different lifespan of their networks in order to make the return on investment.
Yeah.
But of course, the industry is also new, and yeah, and whatever is utilization today is not going to be comparable to what's going to be 3 years from now or 5 years from now. So it's all of them, of course, all these site networks are really looking at the future. Yeah, so that's why it's important utilization. Yeah, so 8 to 10% is required mostly to cover the operational costs. That's kind of the base. To be
Yeah.
highly profitable, it's more about 20 to 25%, and that's what they are really hoping for as electric mobility becomes more common. And you see that most of the cars start to have a range where it becomes interesting to use a fast charging network and not just home and work. Yeah, so if I look at the first electric car drivers I drove five years ago, yeah, I was more relying on workplace charging, home charging, because it was 100 miles, 150 miles max in terms of range.
Hmm.
But now you start to have 250 miles, 300 miles, 350 miles, and that becomes a different interest. Um, and even the new Porsche, I think, can already do 270 kilowatt charge in one go.
Yeah.
So it's already like kind of like quite some progress.
Yeah. So this is an investment. This is a long-term investment. Or I mean, the growth is exponential, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
if right now there's opportunity for people to get into investing into these charge stations, and maybe there's not going to be a lot of use right now. Maybe it's not even going to cover your things, but in a couple of years, hopefully, the hope is that you're going to see exponential
Yeah.
increase in use because we're all going to be driving these cars. We're all going to be looking for these charging stations, right? And so then they become
Yeah.
profitable. So who's investing in
Yeah.
this?
So for example, I think it's almost inevitable. Yeah. If you look at least at Europe is putting quite some efforts on the Green Deal. I think Europe clearly saw that the sustainability is a core element for what is considered to be the next, to continue being an economic power worldwide. So, for example, now is up for approval that 60% of CO2 emissions to be cut by 2030, which of course will have to accelerate electric mobility, and that's quite a shift. In the US, it's mostly state driven. So some states have very heavy ambitions plans. So New York has quite some funding coming up for the electrification and charging infrastructure. The same goes for Southern California. And,
Yeah.
I think more and more states are going to follow that approach.
Yes, and then we have like the movements, like the one that is from Volkswagen, right? Is
Yeah,
that the Electrify America thing?
that's the
Yeah.
Electrify America. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And those for you watching that don't know what that is, that's kind of the punishment that the government here made Volkswagen paid for deceiving their customers and selling them diesel. The whole Dieselgate stuff. They're supposed to spend quite a bit of money, right, in setting up
Yeah,
stations.
Volkswagen set an investment of 33 billion for the transformation towards electric mobility.
Yes.
So I think, well, I believe, to be honest, that of course it was a punishment, but I would say that is actually what will save the company. Because it pushed them to really focus on electric mobility as their core business to continue being a global leader in the automotive industry. And they only going to produce electric cars here and onwards. They just launched the competitive of, let's call it the Model 3, the ID3,
ID3.
and now they recently shared about the ID4, the SUV. So they're going to go full on electrification and pushing electric mobility, because they know that this is an opportunity to take advantage of, because otherwise they're going to be left behind.
Yes, yeah, and then obviously people didn't don't. I don't know if people care, but some people did care. They felt betrayed, right? And so there's a lot of activism against them because they got caught several times. By the way, they didn't just
Yeah,
right. And it's weird because here's the thing with me. I convert. This is my electric bus right here, right? So I've been driving that forever. And so I'm a fan of BW, right? But I'm like a fan of BW from the 50s. Like the modern BW, I'm like, screw that company, they're liars, they're a bunch of cheaters. It's such a weird thing to have this two dynamic, position on the same company, by the way.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
definitely, yeah, those stations. Are you benefiting from that? Are they installing or using some of that budget to install some of your equipment here in the United States?
So in terms of the fast charging network, Electrify America essentially has open tenders. Yeah, and I think it's in their interest to have several vendors. It's just a risk assessment of these large providers. No one is going to have one single hardware provider. We never know what might happen on the days of tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is in our interest, of course, as a company, to provide these fast charging stations to Electrify America. We haven't introduced fast charging stations in the US yet. Hopefully not. Like the first fast charging stations are to be shipped end of this year, which is a very exciting moment for us.
All right.
Um, from then onwards, as I say, is about proving our quality and reliability, and hopefully through that, we become hopefully one of the vendors for Electrify America. So far, I do not know who produces for or who offers to Electrify America their network, because they white label the charging stations as they will white label ours as well.
I see. How much competition is there in your field right now? How many manufacturers are making these level 3 or DC fast charging stations?
Well, I would say that people say it's a new industry, but already has quite some competition. It is not necessarily a crowded space, but it's also not an easy space to be part of. We saw companies trying to enter that space and leave, like Bosch, Schneider Electric in the past, come and go Siemens as well. But the main competitors, or not say competitors, I'll even say the ones that are along with us pushing the industry forward, because at this stage it's more about increasing the mind share and the space of the industry rather than competing. Of course, we're going to compete, but the industry is still very young, and we all have space to grow. So yes, we do see as competitors in a sense of like they are approaching the same addressable market as we are, but we also learn a lot from them. Hopefully, they learn a lot from us. And at this moment, it's more important to accelerate the transition to electric mobility than trying to gain market share. Whatever is the addressable market today, it's going to be minuscule compared to what will be in 3 years' time. Like in 3 years' time, just a single year will be more than the last 5 years together. So,
Yes.
so in that sense, we are still all figuring out what we have to do today in order to keep being a leading company in the next couple of years, in the next decade. Having said this, of course, ChargePoint is a well-known company, especially in the US. Was one of the company that also started in 2010. Recently had a SPAC, in the US, which is great because it shows the value of charging companies in this ecosystem, which we're very proud of to see one of them. And of course, we have companies like 3TM, EFASEC, ABB, which is a mostly known global company, which also produce these level 3 fast chargers as well. So those are really good companies that we learn a lot from, and of course we hope that they also learn from us, and that's at least those are the main ones that we see it often in the US or even in Europe.
Yeah, it's exciting times for you guys right now, right? Because without, I mean, yeah, all of you guys are expected to uh, to increase, right, production, to gain market share, because like I said, it's exponential growth from here on in, right? Like, at least here in the States, from a single manufacturer, right? They're producing tenfold cars every year, right? And then with the introduction, like GM is actually putting out some decent cars out there now.
Yeah.
Um, then this brand new companies like Rivian. Who else? Is there other companies? I know Hummer just announced a new car,
Yeah.
and so
Oh, Rivian is very excited. They have a counterpart called Arrival in the US. I believe Faraday Future.
Faraday Future. But we
I'm,
haven't seen anything from them other than just a
yeah,
lot of
exactly. I'm trying to
vaporware.
think if it's Faraday Future or Lucid Motors that presented
I
one
think
of their
I think
cars.
Lucid stands a better chance to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
stuff. I think Faraday Future is kind of shaky. I think their investor was, kind of shady. They didn't have
yeah. That's the
money.
one that had some.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got some of their batteries a couple years ago. So they got a few pallets of batteries that they're going to try in one of their prototypes, and apparently they didn't need them. And then they eventually someone contacted me and said, "Hey, do you want to buy all these batteries?" And I bought them. And then years later, it's a funny story. I'm talking to them at one of these trade shows, right? LA Auto Show. And I mentioned that to
mm.
one of the guys. Says, "Hey, yeah, I got some of your batteries back in the day and stuff." And they're like, "You did? What are you talking about?" And so it turns out that maybe the guy shouldn't have sold me those batteries. Whoever was from that company, And I'm like, "Whoops!" And he goes, "Well, that guy's not with us anymore, and maybe that's the reason." And I go, "Oh, I didn't know that." I'm like, he contacted me, and he was from Faraday Future. So that company might
Well,
never actually go into production. I don't know, right? I mean, anything's possible, I guess.
yeah, and in the middle of these, of course, US and Europe are two markets that is well known, but we also have the Chinese market, which we are not there. It's a whole different ball game, the Chinese market. But you have companies like NIO or Byton and BYD
BYD.
for buses, which is mostly for buses. But even then, it's quite impressive that from day to night, you can have an electric vehicle company out of China. I think there was a new one that came recently. So there's a lot of investment also from China, which of course, understandably, also wants to have one electric mobility because it's one of the core pillars to solve a lot of their sustainable goals. Yeah, because of air pollution in China is still quite high.
Yeah.
Secondly, the automotive industry is one of the main industries worldwide, and China did not have a prominent position when it was the fuel and the traditional ICE cars. No one knows a Chinese car that is worldwide known, but electric mobility does offer an opportunity for them to enter on that market and to compete with European players and US manufacturers. And that's why it's also a very interesting industry for them to disrupt and come into, which I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting. Do they have they adopted the same format, the same like do they use CCS Combo?
I do not know if it's fully adopted. China mostly still very much on based on a regular charging, so the level two and the level two charger or that are mostly known in China. It is a market to get to know. I will assume that they might have an interest on Chademo, mostly because of the close
Proximity.
proximity with Japan. But probably at least for them to enter the US market or the European market with their electric cars or solutions, they will have to consider CCS2 as probably the standard as well, making it also easier for them to scale.
Yeah. Well, and Tesla is there, right, in the country building cars,
Yeah.
and so I know they're going to push their network, obviously. Um, but yeah, it'd be interesting because imagine if they do adopt CCS Combo, then all of a sudden that makes that form factor that standard much more valuable. I think, right? Because China is a huge
Mhm.
market,
Yeah.
and so let me ask you about this.
Yes, it's hot.
Here in the States, we're starting to see electrification of a lot of these city buses and school buses, utility vehicles. Is that the standard also CCS? Like, because those are bigger battery, right? Bigger vehicle, bigger battery, right? So a city bus would have like a giant battery, right? I mean, it's not like a car. It's maybe like 2.5, maybe 3 cars battery worth. So
Yeah.
they need fast charging, right? Are they being adopted? Is that CCS combo the standard that people are using?
Many of them, yes. So we do have a bunch of projects with light commercial vehicles, even buses that are using CCS2 as the standard to also charge. Some of them find creative solutions of having two charging entry points where you have two CCS2 charging the
Boom.
batteries.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's quite a lot of power. There's also the other one more complex, which is the pantography. I never not say the name, which is more the wireless
Ah, okay.
the
Oh, yeah, the
wireless
one on
charger that
top.
comes
It's
from above.
in a yeah. So it's like an yeah. We have one close by here. I think in Burbank. There's a route of
Okay.
buses that have that.
Yeah, pantograph charging. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. Yeah, pantograph charging. Yeah, so
Oh, I
that's
see.
yeah, so that's another one that would be yeah, because then I think it can go up to 600 kilowatts.
Whoa.
But yeah, the infrastructure to implement that is also not necessarily as easy. There's a whole infrastructure to connect. Depot charging with the CCS2 ultra fast chargers could be, and it seems to be rapidly uptaking because it's an easier installation
Yeah.
and also easier to understand the technology. Also, accessibility of tech, technical expertise to do the serving, the installation is something to keep in mind. And of course, the more diverse solutions exist, the harder it's going to be to find talent, even, or the harder it's going to be to train a new generation of engineers, technicians to be able to support this network,
Yeah.
which will be definitely something I'll be looking at, even from a future skills point of view, because not all countries have availability of high qualified engineers or technicians to support the maintenance and the servicing of these fast charging stations, which are not as easy as a regular level 2 station, which is more easy to find installers around the world that know how to operate or can be quickly trained.
Yeah, you're talking about higher voltage, higher power outputs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe more technical know-how is needed. Um, so let me ask you about this. Like, what is each one of these stations that you guys are installing is connected, right? It's either connected to you
Yeah.
guys or to the owner. How does that work?
Both. So one of the things that we see as a strength of EVBox as we build the organization is that we of course have our own charging management software that companies can use to set up quickly their operations, imagining that they want to just set their own charging infrastructure, and they don't want to like do the whole management operation. They just want to set it up, maybe set a tariff, how much people are going to pay per kilowatt, have the overview of all the assets, all the charging stations. Maybe they want to have some control on the reimbursement of the billing, collection, some elements of smart charging. Yeah. So what times of the day I want to charge or not. So all of that could be taken with a simple charging management solution like the one we offer as EVBox to market. So an integrated approach of you have the hardware, the software, and the services in one go. So those are companies that normally do not have charging as their core business. They're just looking to offer as a add-on, as a perk, as a benefit, amongst other things. So that could be workplace charging, where they don't really want to make a profit out of it. They want maybe to compensate the costs, but they most want to offer to staff, employees, guests in the context of all their offering.
Okay.
The same could be for retail, hospitality, where it is an add-on to generate interest to go to their place. So a large retail like Macro or let's say IKEA, if you can fast charge or if you can charge normally at IKEA, it's quite a convenience, quite a cost to go there. Oh, I can go at IKEA and I can charge, which is, two benefits in one. And you'll have mostly more than enough time because no one goes to IKEA for less than an hour or 2 hours.
Yes.
So at least that's quite an advantage for them.
Yeah.
No, but it's also about brand equity and sustainability approach and reducing CO2 emissions, which is becoming quite an important success measure of business ethics and business progress. So that's on that case. Now, there are a lot of other companies which have either their own software integrated with with their other applications, and in that case, our hardware basically make an integration to their backend. And there's few cases of automotive companies which, of course, want to have control of the customer relationship and they want to have their own ecosystem of software. They want to have that development on their own end. We also have the cases of potentially energy companies which develop their own software that connects with their energy contracts, with their grid utilization. So they prefer to have on their own backend. So in that way, we have also an approach that we are software agnostic. And if the case applies, we have a whole integrated solution. So that allows for flexibility and adapt to the customer needs, which we see as a key strength in the way we go to market.
Ah, I see. And so, yeah, depending on the customer, whoever owns it, they decide to make an app or do a thing, or maybe have do they have like card readers and stuff to process payments like via? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they could have so there are, of course, people know that they either have, especially in the US, they might have a contactless credit card or payment on a terminal. Mm-hmm. We do hope that the industry evolves to avoid credit card readers on the stations because we know that the world is moving contactless. Mm-hmm. So it's an add-on cost that probably is going to just complexify when people are having Apple Pay and Google Wallets nowadays already on their phone.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies, especially in Europe, they have a whole system of, let's call it loyalty cards or roaming cards, where you basically have a RFID card, so a card from a provider, and you can charge at any station around Europe or around the US. So, for example, us and ChargePoint, we have an agreement, which means that someone with a ChargePoint card could charge at an EVBox station, and someone with the EVBox charging card could charge at the ChargePoint station.
Okay, so there's compatibility
there. So those agreements, yeah, exactly. So and that's quite important for the industry because it's still new. So you have to work together to make sure we work with each other's stations. And so for us, it's important, that element of it. And then it depends on the customer. Some customers want to have a fully customizable, and we have a whole platform that we call, that we have Everon, which is actually a spin-off company. Within EVBox, about last year, we spin off our own software development team into its own company. So they can offer a white label platform where they can integrate different hardware beyond EVBox, because many customers want to have different hardware vendors, but to a single platform where they can set up their billing plans, build their own mobile app, build their smart charging profiles. So that's quite a differentiator, because then we can integrate essentially with almost any business model out there.
I see. That's pretty cool. Yeah, because from a user standpoint, right? Like I've used to we used to own a Chevy Volt, which was hybrid, but it could
Mm-hmm.
charge level 2, right? And so I remember going to places and trying to charge, and then being confused, going like, what, how do you do this thing? And then the early ones I remember, you used to like have to call a number, or look at some website and type in a thing and put your like billing information into a thing in an app or something, and then it would generate like little number, and then you would type a number in the little box. And then there was several of these companies, like ChargePoint was one of the ones that we eventually signed up, and we have the little keychain card, right, to swipe. But it was confusing, to keep track of the networks, which ones would work, which ones were, and you would go to one and you're like, oh, that's not a charge point, so I can't do it. I would have to set up another thing, right? And sometimes you'd be like, I don't have the time to set up a whole new account with a whole new network of charging, right? That I've never seen before, probably never going to see it again. Is that becoming a thing where now it's like you said, you guys have backwards compatibility now with
Mm-hmm.
ChargePoint, which is a cool thing. Now, if you go to one of your things, I'll be like, oh, I'll be able to charge because I have an account there. Is that a thing that is happening now?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's less
Yeah,
confusing now.
I believe that. Yeah, that was one of the pain points of many of the drivers, being in Europe or in the US, which, of course, in the US, the early advantage of ChargePoint in building their own network, quite a large one, means that people feel comfortable because there's I would say a solid network for them, but doesn't mean that they cannot have like a full experience,
Yeah.
across state. Or if they come to Europe, they have again to figure out. And in Europe, different countries have different norms, which also can create a lot of confusion. And normally I compare to the time where, at least I do not know how it was in the US, but at least in Europe, if I had, when I was living in Portugal, I had a SIM card with a Portuguese network on my smartphone. And if I'll go to the Netherlands, my provider had to have a contract with the provider, the telecommunications provider in the Netherlands. If he didn't
Yes.
have,
It didn't
my
work.
phone would just not work.
Yes.
I had to replace the SIM card. I had to create a new contract. It was such a painful experience that afterwards there was all these roaming contracts, which happens still today. If I go to the US, there is a roaming agreement where I have to pay quite a lot of money for a few megabytes still
Yeah.
today. But that's a reality. So there is a whole very similar approach to electric mobility where you have to create this kind of roaming harmonization and allow people to just charge whatever they want, however they want, independently of the car that they have. And that's one of the developments that the industry is taking forward, and hopefully it will go even faster over the next couple of months and years, because otherwise the user experience is going to be poor for the driver, and it will not give confidence for drivers to switch to electric cars.
Yeah, I know definitely that, going to like a station that doesn't work, for example, that's really bad on the user experience, because I mean you're hoping, right? That's your chance to charge your tank, and it doesn't work. And so then you're like, what do I do now? I can't make it to the next one, or maybe you can. I don't know, but definitely it puts a stain in the user experience, I think, right? And especially this early
Mm-hmm.
on, I think is very important to try to convert as many people. I think it's working. I think it's good. I think the growth is exponential. I think the charging. I've never charged using the CCS combo again because I don't have a card that uses it yet. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to use it quite a bit, because now if I get Rivian, right, that's going to be the mode of charging, at least on the go. At home, it will be the same 1772 that will be charging it. But I think maybe it's gonna be more. Yeah, it's gonna be because of the battery size, right? So now you're getting into these big battery sizes with these cars. Our
Mm-hmm.
Tesla
Mm-hmm.
has 65 kilowatt hour battery, so it's easy to
Yeah.
charge it at home. You just plug it in, the next morning it's done or mostly done. But now if you have 180 kilowatt hours and you want to go on a trip or something, it's going to take quite a bit of time, right, to charge at home. And so you might be like, we'll just charge on the way. right? But if the stations are not there, then all of a sudden you're like, well, you can't. So so we're gonna rely, I think, more. At least some of us, some cases. I think the industry is gonna go to smaller batteries as there's more charging stations because nobody needs to be carrying around that much battery, right? Why do you need 1,200
Hmm.
pounds of
Hmm.
battery if you can charge every 10 miles? There's a charging station, right? A fast charging station. So I think that's where the industry is going to go. Smaller batteries, more charging structure, infrastructure. But I think as of right now, we're seeing this trend where like bigger and bigger batteries, right? Bigger vehicles like this Rivian and stuff. And so we're gonna rely quite heavily, I think, on mobile charging. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things, one of the patterns that we already see across the US and Europe, and we see as a pattern that probably is going to follow, which is today about 70, 80% of the charging happens at home and at work, give or take. And the rest happens outside of home and outside of work. And what we see is a transformation where maybe 50, 60% happens at home and at work, and the other 40% happens actually in public and semi-public areas, where people are going to get more comfortable with the idea of charging outside of home.
yes.
So that's a transition that we see. Fast charging networks, of course, are going to become extremely critical for the safety that if I want to go, because it's always a trigger, yeah, if I want to go on a long distance trip, can I do it? Even if it takes more time or not, you start adjusting the trip to have more fun in between. One of the things that I like to think as road trips go alike, of course, when you go on a business trip, you want to be less time as possible in idle. Yeah, you don't want to stop, you don't want to be waiting. However, if you go on a family trip, if you stop a few more times and you spend like 3 more hours or 4 more hours on the road waiting, but you also take advantage to visit certain areas on that trip, that becomes quite a more interesting way of getting to know your own country or countries around, which I think is also maybe a benefit from that pauses, and maybe people will start seeing as, oh, maybe I can pause here, and by the way, what's around for us to see.
Yeah.
So maybe today the large fast charging networks, you already see some creative efforts. I already saw in Europe a few of them that have a whole mall next to it, so people can actually charge and go to the mall, do some shopping, some restaurants.
Yeah.
There was one that was near a theme park, which, okay, that's a bit maybe on an extreme of time spent charging versus on a theme park, but I see the creativity
Yeah.
that starts to happen um, through the locations, and as you said, like, it's not going to be so much about increasing the batteries. I think it's going to be more about the efficiency of the batteries. And Tesla just recently, Musk had an announcement on the battery development. And
Yeah.
as you could see, it was not about bigger batteries. It was all about the batteries will become more efficient. They will
Yes.
give more range with the same kilowatt hour. And we'll find, at a cheaper cost because we'll have a more economy of scale.
Yeah.
So perhaps, with the breakthroughs that batteries are having and the exponential development of electric mobility, and also the whole smartphone utilization, chances are that we'll find even maybe new technologies that will make a more efficient use of energy. And
Yeah.
maybe indeed the batteries will stagnate in terms of power size, or not.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. He did talk about those batteries being more thermally stable, which will allow them to charge fast. So maybe we're gonna start seeing, more cars. Of course, if that's the trend in the whole battery industry, then what happens is that you can now with smaller battery sizes you can charge 350 kilowatt rates, right? Because that's the problem right now. Batteries suffer quite a bit of degradation when you charge them fast,
Mm-hmm.
and so the better you can thermally control those cells, then the faster you can charge them.
Mm-hmm.
And you could charge fast, I think, if you have a giant battery, right? Because then each cell is seeing that much less. But I think with the trend of getting smaller batteries, but faster charging, then that becomes a real issue. And I think that's the thing that most of us miss when on his announcement. And I think that's the important thing here is that it's going to allow them to have smaller batteries with faster charging. That's going to be awesome, and obviously make it available for us to travel and stuff. And yeah, how so? Definitely, Are you guys installing quite a bit of these? No, I mean, is there stations that can do 350, or no one is installing those just
Yeah, yeah.
because there's no use for them yet?
Well, we do have ultra fast charging stations already on the market, already installed that do up to 350 kilowatts power
Really?
output. Now,
Wow.
having said this, there are not yet cars
There's
available
no
that can
cars.
take that amount of power.
Yeah,
I think the best we have seen was the Porsche Taycan.
the
As far
Taycan.
as the Taycan was able to take the most amount of power,
And that was
I
what, like
believe, from
less than 300, right? Like 200 and
yeah, less than 300. I'm actually trying to see if I see 268.
268. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's not very far ahead of Tesla, because Tesla can do 250 now.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So that was the one. I was just checking now the picture because it took like a celebration picture kind of kind of thing when that moment happened.
yeah.
And yeah, 268
What
kilowatts.
are
That was that.
what are the voltage standards for this CCS Combo 350 kilowatt stations?
It to be so yesterday in was about 350 amperes was I think he was able to take the equivalent of 766 volts.
Wow. So those stations could do all the way to 700 volts.
That was the yeah
Wow.
766 volts on that specific charging. Yeah,
Oh, that's serious. Because I think that
yeah,
car is an 800 volt car, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's out of the norm. Most cars today are of about 400 volts, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
96S batteries. That seems to be the standard. But maybe we're gonna see a trend where we start seeing higher voltages. You think
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
good thing?
For well, I think mm, I'll see more in two cases. I'll see more in what you can call sports cars. I don't know if I can call sports cars, but a Taycan is
Hypercars.
definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The Taycan, I think the new Tesla Roadster is coming to market. Maybe there is even a Mustang electric. I think those have the interest of having high voltage, high capacity of battery because they consume a lot of power. Yeah, people that are driving those cars, I assume that a lot of the times they are enjoying the torque, they are
Yeah.
enjoying the acceleration. They are not necessarily driving the car in a, I would say, in a very mild, comfortable way. I assume they do speed up a few times, or at least what's the point of having a Porsche Taycan or a Tesla Roadster if not to also have some fun?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I would say that would be one of the cases. The other one is that light commercial vehicles,
Yes.
buses,
Buses.
those ones will require high voltage, of course, and that's a specific
Yes.
use case. But it is important to understand that they will definitely require such voltage
So
or even
that's
higher.
coming, no matter what. That's coming because you're right. A city bus is not going to work on 400 volts, right? They're going to need,
No,
yeah, 800 at least.
at least 800. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're right. And so now these stations are can provide that. What's the maximum that you can provide with these stations, with these three-phase stations in Europe?
Oh, I wish I had my technical specialist here with me. I'll go on a hint that is a 350 kilowatts power output with 800 volts.
800 volts
That
is
will be probably, yeah, that
without
will be
having to
probably
step it
where I'm
up
at.
or having to boost it up or any of that nonsense, right? That's just from three
Yeah, no,
phases coming
yeah,
in.
I'm talking about, yeah, the I'm talking about our current ultra fast chargers. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, of course, there is a whole set of combinations that one can do with battery storage, power units that probably could deliver some kind of different power output.
Yes.
But then yes, then it becomes really a technical conversation and technical installation on how to set up the site, what kind of grid capacity the site has. So those ones I would say they are extremely important, more for potential very high utilization sites. But
Yes.
for the buses and the light commercial vehicles, they kind of have most of the times a very defined route. So it's rather easier to define, okay, where are they going to charge and how are we going to equip the site with the right voltage and the right infrastructure for them, because they have predictable routes whereby, yeah, for other cars like the Taycan or the Roadster probably will not have a predictable route. So then it will be just a standard high power charging situation.
Yes. Well, yeah, but when they're increasing, right? Fleets are more and more people are increasing, right? Like I know Rivian just
Mm.
signed a deal with Amazon, I think.
Amazon,
So they're gonna have quite a bit of these vehicles roaming around.
yeah,
They might need to charge at places where there's not, normal routes or whatever, so
yeah,
that's gonna
they might
become.
have to. Yeah, they might have to create with Amazon a whole schedule of where to charge, how to charge, build probably sites for charging infrastructure just for themselves.
Yeah,
That is a very high possibility. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
gonna need a lot of EVBox charging stations.
Well, hopefully yes.
Yes, you need to
That's a, that's the hope.
you need
It's
to
a
be.
fantastic company, Rivian. Yeah, it's a fantastic culture-wise as well. We met them. We met a lot of their team at CES, Consumer
CES.
Electronic Trade Show in Las Vegas.
Yes.
The CES, yeah. So they were there presenting the new pickup truck this year, early this year,
Yeah.
prior to Corona.
Yeah. Before
Still
the
feels like
before the end of the world. Yeah.
before, yeah, before the end of the world. Yeah, and then it was great to see the vision of RJ Scaringe, the CEO, and other ones, which was very exciting to know what they will deliver. And it seems like they already promised us to be more than 400 miles pickup truck, which is quite impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a 135 kilowatt hour battery,
What
or there is
starts?
even a long range. There is a long range of 180 kilowatt hour battery, I believe,
Yeah.
and the shortest one is 105. There was
It's
something like that
big
that
batteries.
was mentioned.
So
Yeah,
we're
so
just.
it's impressive.
It is pretty impressive. We're just watching a TV show that was shot a year ago. It was Ewan McGregor. It's called Long Way Up, and
Hmm.
he went on an electric motorcycle all the way from Chile down, Tierra del Fuego down there, like way down there, all the way up to LA, right? And there's a couple of Rivians that are following them. And Rivian got on board, and I guess they were like, well, where are they going to charge the bikes? And I think Rivian was thinking, like, well, forget the bikes. Where are you going to charge these Rivians? So I think they made some kind of like uh, partnership with Juice Box, because you and the show you could see everywhere they go. There's two stations, two juice box stations, and they go and charge their bikes. But I think ahead of them are going and charging the Rivians, because the Rivians are going to take forever to charge. Like I said, these are giant batteries. I think they gave them the 180 kilowatt hour batteries. That would have been great to have signed something like that for you guys, right? Where you signed some kind of partnership.
Hopefully with the next commercial.
Yes, that's a cool thing. I have planned to do kind of like a series of videos, because I think I'm fairly early in the pre-order, and so I want to do some review of the thing, because everybody's gonna be wanting to know what it is to own one of these and drive them and stuff. But also, I think there's gonna be quite a bit of questions as to where do you go and charge. How is it to live with
Yeah,
one of these?
there is a very high interest to get to know the models that are out there. I
Yeah.
personally, for example, like to see. There's a show in the UK on the YouTube. It's called Fully Charged Show,
Oh yeah, fully
which
charged.
is
I'm having him and
yeah,
the
fully
podcast
charged.
here next week. Robert
Yeah,
Llewellyn. Robert Llewellyn is coming to
Robert.
us.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he like I think before electric mobility, it was not known. Yeah, now like just driving the car, giving the experience, sharing how it is to drive. It's a great way, because nowadays also people are ordering online, pre-ordering without seeing a car. If someone would come.
Oh, did we lose him? And we are still recording our minds. So, you were talking about fully charged.
Yeah.
Did you have the chance to attend the UK version event that he had?
No, not this year. He was planning to come to Amsterdam for another event this year,
Oh, that's
but
right.
because of the whole situation with the Corona, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And but we have an event also hosted by EVBox group, which is called Revolution, which is a mobility event, and we had them joining us 2 years
Oh,
ago actually on that event. So that was nice to get to know them as they were growing as
yeah.
a channel.
You guys, I guess you're gonna have to come to Texas next year.
Yeah, yeah. We hopefully that will be a good sign.
Yeah. Hopefully this is all done. No more pandemic nonsense, and then yeah, we can get together in Austin. It's a beautiful city. I don't know if you've been to the states and to
No,
Austin.
heard lovely things about it,
Yeah,
but haven't
Austin
been
is
yet.
amazing. And last time we were there, it was a party because everybody that
Oof.
was having to do with electric cars and everything was there. It was a good event. I hope this next year is gonna be awesome. And now with Tesla opening up a factory there, it's gonna be even better, right? So
Yes, more attention to it.
yeah. So yeah, if you do come, I guess we'll see you there because hopefully next week when he comes, we'll hash out some plan or something. Last year I wanted to take my vehicles there, but it's such a long trip for me to go there, right? So we just flew there for the weekend and we did the event and stuff. It was pretty good. But definitely it's a cool place for you guys to network, right? Like even like it's so
Yeah,
it's
to get to know the industry, reconnect with some mobility experts, also some influencers, and also to get in contact with people that
yeah.
use our charging stations, but also that are passionate about the industry. It's always a
Yes.
great atmosphere, great energy, and a lot of inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully next year Tesla will be there. Rivian was there last year. So next year, hopefully they'll be also there, and we'll be all taking our cars. Um, so that's pretty good. Well, I hope to that you guys have all the success in the world. We definitely need more DC fast charging stations here in the states, and I hope they're your EVBox units, so that yeah,
No,
you guys
thanks,
can
thanks
gain.
for that, and yeah, let's hope that we all see a bright future on the next transition that we're gonna have towards electric mobility.
Yeah, I can't wait to find one of those while I'm driving my Rivian. And we'll talk maybe later because here's the thing: as soon as I get my Rivian, then I have planned to do kind of like a trip across the U.S. maybe and see. Hopefully by then you'll have some of these units out here, right? You say you're going to start introducing them this
Yeah,
year, and maybe we can do some collaboration where I can go and charge at one of yours and kind of explain the
yeah.
whole
No, that
thing.
sounds like a great way to move forward.
Yeah, because definitely I think we need to form these partnerships. I think together, right? And like I say, I never charged CCS Combo before because I never had the need to, but I know that you definitely, you know, charging is one of those things that you take for granted until you need it, and then when it's there, you just love it. You're like, finding the charging the supercharger stations for our Tesla. It's amazing, and it makes you wonder like we like to go off kind of exploring. There's a big
Hmm.
wildlife like in a park, a national park close to us. It's called Joshua Tree, and it's out there remote. There's not like
Okay.
no service, no electricity or nothing. And at one point, it was kind of an impossibility for us to drive our electric cars out there. But now, because there's a charging station just outside of it, you can totally just go and charge, and then you go into this wild, desert, and it's pretty amazing to see that, and to think about, sit there and watch the stars, and be like, I'm so far away, and yet I'm here with my electric car. It's pretty special to do that, and I think with more infrastructure, I think that's more of those experiences are going to be available. Maybe to go visit Utah. There's a bunch of like parks out there that we want to see, but we don't want to take our gas cars. We want to take our electric cars. And so,
That's a commitment. That's a commitment, and it sounds like an amazing experience.
yeah. So yeah, I hope that you guys are successful in bringing your charging stations here in the States, and we get to see them and we get to charge with them and stuff. And yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today for this conversation. It's pretty interesting to talk about electric charging infrastructure and the future.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and yeah, looking forward to see the next episodes, and also to see your next experiences with charging with your Rivian
The
while you
Rivian.
still enjoy your Tesla. Yeah.
Yes, I'm still a CCS Combo virgin. But as soon as I take my Rivian, bam, I'm gonna go and charge. I'm actually excited about this because I don't know how fast it's gonna charge, but it's a big battery, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna be able to sustain some high charging rates, right?
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised.
Yes. And like I said, other than the superchargers I haven't experienced, I want to. I definitely don't want to be only, only the one brand, because there's so much more. The future holds, there's going to be so much more players, and it's going to be pretty amazing, I think, the future. I'm excited for the future. So, thank you, and have a
Thank you.
good night over there in Europe. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. All right.